Hi, and welcome to Talking Wildfire with Michael Hill. Today we're going to be talking about the history of the West Yellowstone Smokejumpers from 1934 to the early 2000s. The West Yellowstone Smokejumper Base, located on the edge of Yellowstone National Park, is a small airborne firefighter base in the United States, and it has a unique history. To tell this story, I will have to start at the beginning of the story of the American Smokejumpers. In 1934, a Region 4 U.S. Forest Service ranger named T.V. Pearson came up with the idea of parachuting people into forests to fight wildfires. The idea was abandoned as being too risky. In 1935 to 1939, David Godwin, then the Assistant Chief of Fire Control at the Forest Service Washington office, headed an aerial fire control experiment project in California that determined dropping water and chemicals by aircraft was not feasible with its current aircraft, but much was learned about using airplanes and dropping cargo in a mountainous terrain. In 1939, Godwin transferred his experimental project to the U.S. Forest Service Interagency Airport in Region 6, located in Washington between the communities of Twisp and Winthrop. Emphasis was shifted from firebombing to developing a safe and practical method of dropping firefighters from the air. The initial smokejumper experiments were conducted between October 5th and November 15th, 1939. 30-foot silk canopy Eagle parachutes were used with extended skirts, and the parachute were originally attached directly to its harness and container, with a 3-pin ripcord system deploying the parachute. During these tests, the parachutes were modified with V-rings on its risers and snaps added to its harnesses to facilitate letdowns for jumpers from tree landings. In 1940, 2 smokejumper training centers were established. One with 7 smokejumpers at Seeley Lake, Montana, and 6 smokejumpers at the Winthrop, Washington base. Both new bases used a single travel air airplane between them to drop these first American firefighter parachutists. The Region 1 U.S. Forest Service smokejumpers from Montana and Idaho were later moved to Moose Creek for the fire season of 1940. Rufus Robertson and Earl Cooley made the first ever fire jump in the United States here on July 12, 1940, over Martin Creek in the Nez Perce National Forest in Idaho. Francis Lufkin and Glenn Smith made the first ever fire jump in Region 6, Washington and Oregon, on August 10, 1940, at Bridge Creek. The news program attracted the attention of the military in 1940, and Major William Carey Lee, with 3 staff officers, visited the smokejumpers and learned from them, and they used the Forest Service's ideas to organize the first United States paratroop training facility at Fort Benning, Georgia, on the eve of World War II. In 1941, experiments by the smokejumpers were conducted, and the parachute, the Eagle, was changed from using a ripcord for its deployment to a static line system. In 1943, smokejumper bases were established at McCall, Idaho, and Cave Junction, Oregon. The first fire jump from McCall was conducted on the Captain John Creek Fire by John Ferguson and Lester Gallarat in 1943. The Civilian Public Service, CPS for short, was created to give conscientious objectors who had no interest in fighting in World War II a chance to serve their country anyway, but as volunteer smokejumpers during the war. The smokejumper parachute was again changed during this time, as it became the FS-1 parachute. It was a white 28-foot flat circular canopy with dairy slots for steering cut into its rear and guidelines attached to the skirts and connector links. In 1944, DC-3 aircraft joined the small fleet of travel airs and tri-motors the smokejumpers were using. The first fire jumps done in Region 5, California are made from Oregon, the Cave Junction Smokejumper Base. Paradoctors are trained by the U.S. Forest Service for the Army, and they are used on rescue jumps into the forest. In 1945, 300 African American men from the Army's 555th Battalion, or Triple Nickels, are trained by the U.S. Forest Service Smokejumper program as a force multiplier to help smokejumpers respond to Japanese firebombing attacks from balloons across the American West that are being kept secret from the American public. In 1946, the CPS program ends with the close of World War II. Returning servicemen provide many needed recruits this summer for the Smokejumper program. The National Park Service begins to provide additional funds to the Smokejumpers, and fires are jumped for the first time in Yellowstone and Glacier National Parks. In 1947, McCall and Cave Junction developed their own training facilities. Region 3, the U.S. Forest Service's southwest area, brings smokejumpers down to Deming, New Mexico for its spring fire season on the Gila National Forest. This effort later became the sub-base in Silver City, New Mexico. In 1948, a sub-base is established also in Idaho City, Idaho, and helicopters are used for the first time for smokejumper retrievals. In 1949, 12 smokejumpers are killed when they are overrun on the ground by the fire in Man Gulch. This year, the color of the parachutes has also changed for the smokejumpers. They go from being all white to alternating orange and white panels, or being candy striped. In 1950, the evolution of the smokejumper parachute changes again as the FS2 model comes out. This is the same as the FS1. It's a 1.6 twill nylon canopy, except it has 3 rear panels. In 1951, a smokejumper unit is established at West Yellowstone, Montana, and it's funded in the beginning by the Park Service, and it consists of a squad leader and 2 two-person jump teams. In 1954, the smokejumper parachutes are beginning to change again. This year, the FS5 comes into play. It's a 32-foot flat circular canopy made of 1.1 ripstop nylon, and it has 7-foot slots and 3 tails to make it maneuverable, and it is orange with 5 white panels. Grangeville, Idaho's subbase is also opened this year in 1954. In 1957, the Redding Smokejumper Base is established in California. In 1959, the Bureau of Land Management establishes its first smokejumper base in Fairbanks, Alaska. In 1960, the FS-5A parachute is placed in use. This is a 35-foot modified FS-5 parachute with its steering slots lengthened to 10 foot for added maneuverability and guidelines attached from its skirt inside its canopy. In 1964, smokejumper bases are added by the U.S. Forest Service in Boise, Idaho, and Redmond, Oregon. In 1965, West Yellowstone becomes an interagency base, and Region 1, U.S. Forest Service takes over its management, using it as a subbase from the Missoula Smokejumper Base. In 1968, the FS-10 parachute is field tested. The FS-10 parachute is a 35-foot parabolic 1.1 ripstop nylon canopy with 7-panel separation. It has an elliptical TU aperture, and toggles are added to its guidelines, and a D-bag or deployment bag is used with it. The Army gives this parachute its own designation and places it into service with its airborne troops as well. In 1970, Idaho City base is combined with the Boise Smokejumper Base. In 1971, Cave Junction, Oregon sets up as a subbase to respond to wildfires on U.S. Forest Service lands in the American East, or Region 8, at the Tri-City area of Tennessee and Virginia. In 1972, West Yellowstone becomes its own independent smokejumper base. The smokejumper parachute color changes this year as well to an orange color with 11 rear white panels. In 1974, the LeGrand, Oregon Smokejumper Base is established. 1976 to 1977, Soviet-American Smokejumper Exchange Program begins with the joint U.S.-Russian practice jumps at Winthrop, Washington, at the North Cascade Smokejumper Base. In 1978, the Ram Air Smokejumper Parachute development begins by the Bureau of Land Management in Fairbanks, Alaska. In 1979, Jiggs Parker with the ACT of Congress becomes the U.S. Forest Service's first hybrid air tanker, retardant base operator, and rescue jumper. In 1980, the U.S. Forest Service Boise Smokejumper unit is moved to McCall, Idaho. 1981, Diane Shulman at McCall becomes the first female smokejumper. 1982, the FS-12 parachute is brought into service by the U.S. Forest Service, and it is a combination of design features maximizing performance from both the American and Russian smokejumper programs. In 1983, the LeGrand, Oregon smokejumper base is closed. In 1988, Yellowstone Park burns. This year, the West Yellowstone Smokejumpers experiment with helicopter rappelling. The first of a handful of other helicopter delivery options this small smokejumper base is conducting training with over the next handful of years. In 1991, McCall Base gets its first U.S. Forest Service turbine DC-3 to drop smokejumpers with. In 1994, Andy McQuaid transfers to West Yellowstone to become West Yellowstone's first female smokejumper. The South Canyon Fire in Colorado happens in 1994 as well, and here firefighters on the ground are overrun by wildfire, and 14 firefighter lives are claimed, including 3 smokejumpers, Don Mackey from Missoula, Roger Roth from McCall, and Jim Thrash from McCall. In 1995, I became a smokejumper, and this season began a small multi-year transition for the U.S. Forest Service of parachute models, moving from the FS-12 to the FS-14 model. The FS-14 model was available in 3 sizes to facilitate the different weights of jumpers during landing so that they would come in at the same velocity and reduce injuries. 1997 to 1999, West Yellowstone has a unit of 4 to 8 Bureau of Land Management smokejumpers detailed to it from the Boise Smokejumper Base to boost or assist its U.S. Forest Service smokejumpers, and many fires and practice jumps are made successfully during this time by both agencies, using a combined mix of aircraft jump loads of BLM ram air parachutes and U.S. Forest Service round parachutes equipping the smokejumpers. In 1999, a Russian smokejumper on exchange with the Boise Smokejumper program spends several weeks at West Yellowstone this season, and he jumps a fire with us. In 2000, Leslie Williams, West Yellowstone's first female rookie, completes her training. Other changes were to follow for West Yellowstone in the early 2000s. The National Park Service again stepped into smokejumping by deciding to begin seasonally funding a single MPS smokejumper squad leader position at West Yellowstone. And a generation of smokejumpers who had fulfilled key roles at West Yellowstone for many years and provided stability retired in the early 2000s, and a new generation of smokejumpers filled the gaps to evolve and write their own unique chapters to the West Yellowstone Smokejumpers history story. I sincerely hope that you enjoy this history of the West Yellowstone Smokejumpers. If you would like to know more about the West Yellowstone Jumpers, we have a visitor center located in West Yellowstone, Montana. We're doing this for all of you. If you like what we're doing, please give us a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and leave a comment below. See you next time.